All right, 5:59. We hereby call the meeting to order, April 22nd, 2024. Introductions. Thank you for having the schedule. I need this today.
Okay.
We'll start here and we'll go around the table.
My name is Trevor Stevens. I'm the business manager for the Community Justice Department.
Thank you, Trevor.
I'm Justin Iworth, a supervisor for substance misuse prevention team in Deschutes County Health Services.
Thank you. Liz Latochinsky, I'm chair and on jet lag.
And here,
And here.
Gary Graceland, advisory panel member for the economic development.
Mary Fleischman, member and member at large, basically.
I'm Carolyn Suffett. I am with OWRD and I'm the region manager for the Bend field office.
Jeremy Giffen, Deschutes-based watermaster for OWRD.
Angie Abner, Administrative Manager for Coordinated Services and Code Enforcement.
Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. I'm the staff support for this committee.
Thank you. And Matt? Oh, we can't hear you.
Hey y'all,
There you
I'm
go.
Matt Hurt. I'm the COO of Cannabis Nation Dispensaries.
Thank you, Matt. And Trevor?
Oh, I'm right here.
Oh, sorry.
I put some of my presentation info there.
Okay. All right, our next order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, January 24th. Did all CAP members have an opportunity to read? And if so, I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion.
Mary has motioned. I need a second. All in favor of approving? Aye. Any opposed? No one's opposed. Okay, terrific. Thank you. And Jen, I believe you are gonna talk a little bit about the proposed allocation for 25.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give a really quick introduction and then I'll turn it over to the staff here to give their presentations, but just so we have it on the record. As you know, one of the tasks for the Cannabis Advisory Panel is to provide recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on how the Deschutes County should spend its annual marijuana tax revenue. Deschutes County is currently in their budget process, almost in their final stages of their budget process right now. And the budget committee will be meeting, I think, the first week of June to approve their budget. So right now, for the last fiscal year, the marijuana tax revenue was $182,000. And for the upcoming fiscal year, the forecasted amount is going to be $185,811. So just slightly higher than what we had last year. We have 4 departments who are requesting tax revenue, and tonight you will hear presentations from all 4 departments. And then hopefully determine budget recommendations for the Board of Commissioners to consider. Right now, I'm scheduled to go before the Board of Commissioners on Wednesday with your recommendations. So hopefully we can land somewhere a little bit firm tonight on those recommendations. And then just for a quick recap, the 4 requests that we have are, the first one is community justice for $55,000. Trevor will go into more detail on this, but there's 3 pools of funds that they're looking for: $25,000 for a 1-year contract to implement the substance abuse youth disorder treatment youth program, $10,000 to help support department-based substance use disorder treatment services for youth, and $20,000 to help fund Moving On therapy program workshop. Moving On is an adult parole probation gender responsive cognitive behavioral therapy program. Hopefully I got that decently correct.
Yes.
Great. Angie is going to be presenting from CDD. The CDD is requesting $20,000, which is what they had last year. This is for code enforcement related to marijuana code complaints. Health Services will be requesting $60,000 to continue the paid media advertising focused on supporting parents and guardians in the county to talk with their kids about marijuana and other drug use. And then the Sheriff's Office is requesting $100,000, which I think is a slight increase from last year, to continue the funding support of a marijuana detective. So that's my quick update. Is there any questions on the process of the recommendations or how we do this with the board? I know you guys, I think this is your 3rd go around now as a committee member. So I think you're pretty well versed in the process, but I just thought I'd throw it out there if anyone had any questions.
Matt, do you?
Nothing on my end.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good.
Okay, so order presentation, community justice. Would you like to share with us your information?
And then before you begin, I just want to do a check. I think last time we did presentations that maybe Matt couldn't see them, so I just want to make sure
And Jen, will you give me sharing capabilities?
I guess so. Do I know how to do that?
Good co-hosts will work.
There we go.
Do my best to listen. You can see it.
Perfect, great.
Okay, thank you everyone. As I said before, my name is Trevor Stevens. I am the business manager for the Community Justice Department. And I'm sorry if I speak quickly. I was trained as an auctioneer when I was younger, so I'm serious, 100%. I worked as a cattle auctioneer for when I was in high school. So I just generally talk fast as it is, but I'll do my best to go as slow as possible. So I appreciate you guys being here this evening, and I appreciate you considering our request. So just some background on parole and probation and community justice. So community justice actually makes up two divisions. We have a juvenile division, which is our division that operates juvenile services. Basically, our mission there is to reduce risk, repair harm, and create opportunity. Our juvenile division operates a detention facility, and they provide community-based supervision for youth who are referred to the criminal justice system in Deschutes County. So right now in Deschutes County, we have 238 youth on supervision, and then 55% of these youth, or 23% of them, are referred specifically for drug-related crimes. And I'll go into a little bit more of those details in just in terms of what that breakdown kind of looks like. But once again, we just thank you for providing funding for the division last year in relation to the substance use disorder treatment. And then looking at our other side, which we didn't make a request last year, but we are making a request this year, is the adult parole and probation division. Now, our mission there is to protect the public safety, ensure accountability, and promote pro-social behavior change. Now, this side of our house is more about community-based supervision, and it's really focusing on clients who are releasing from prison and those individuals that are on probation. So in lieu of going to prison, they're serving a prison sentence, or in lieu of going to jail, they're serving a probation or a post-prison sentence. We have about 1,000 people in Deschutes County on supervision at any given time. And just to kind of give an overview of kind of what the statutory applications are in terms of what juvenile versus parole and probation. In terms of juvenile, it's actually a county requirement by statute that we provide those services. And in terms of parole and probation, it's actually a state function that they've contracted out for years to the counties to provide. So there's a kind of a difference there. In terms of the ages that is served on the juvenile side, it's 12 to 17. And then on the parole and probation side, it's 18 plus. Every once in a while, we'll have a youth who is in that 18 plus range that can still fall into the juvenile category, but we're seeing less and less of that. Basically, on the juvenile side, they review and route their referrals through law enforcement to provide informal supervision and services. So meaning there's no court involved. We also provide formal supervision services, which is probation and post-prison supervision. There's cognitive behavioral training and skill building, restitution support, community service crew, behavioral health services, and detention. So it's kind of a wide range of services that they provide from a community justice standpoint in terms of both juvenile and adult services. In terms of like how we provide supervision, so one of the main routes supervision is provided is through a staff member referred to as a community justice officer. And then on the adult side, it is a parole and probation officer. So a CJO, you kind of think of it as a three-part, we refer to it as a balanced supervision model. And really, it's that law enforcement side, work with a treatment provider, as well as an individual working on skill building. So it's kind of a three-part series that this role plays. And so non-certified officers are those who work and support individuals on probation and informal supervision. The real goal there is getting them back on track on that behavior change and just ensuring that they comply with and that they follow the conditions of their supervision. And a PO is actually a certified officer, so they do have arresting powers. And those individuals, they're really working on that behavior change, but also balancing that accountability model and ensuring that individuals meet the conditions of their supervision.
So the PO with juveniles as well as adults, or just adults?
A PO is only with adults, and then a
Okay.
CJO is only with juveniles.
Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of juvenile community justice, Deschutes County referral data for 2023, we had 766 law enforcement referrals. 140 of those, or 18%, were substance abuse related referrals. And then 71% of those were specifically marijuana offenses that were in those referrals. 69 are alcohol or other drug related, and then 146 youth in 2023 were ordered to obtain a substance abuse evaluation, which 80% of those result in some type of treatment that is being required after that point. So in terms of our requests, we broke them down into priorities just to give just some room in terms of where we would prioritize funding if you're able to provide any for community justice. Our first request is priority 1. It's a request for $25,000. And this is for a contract for a brand new service that we are working to bring to juveniles in Deschutes County. So this program is called, it's First Light Peer Support Services, and it really works to serve 10 to 15 youth at any given time. And what it is it's peer-based mentorship and support. So it's individuals that have been through the criminal justice system, providing a level of support for youth that are on supervision. And research shows that this has really invaluable in terms of having someone understand just what they've experienced. And many of these individuals they had experience in the youth system, so they understand detention, they understand what that looks like. And so it just provides a different level that someone like a CGO can't provide because they just don't have that real world experience that this individual has. And so they really focus on that individualized peer recovery services. And it's really focused on just making sure that these people are connected to the resources they need for that substance abuse. They're engaged in community networks, and they just provide that experience to hopefully help with that behavior change that supports our criminal justice officers in moving steps forward. It also will support our substance use disorder treatment program, and the funds will be used specifically to support recovery mentor staff in that program, as well as working on the program design for that. So it's really individualized peer recovery mentor support is what this contract would last a year, and it would serve at any given time 10 to 15 youth.
Are the peers adult peers that have? Okay,
They are,
they're
yeah.
not youth.
Yes, because
Okay.
we're not able to do that, but many of the individuals have been through the juvenile system at one point or another.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then for community justice juvenile side, our priority 2 request is a request for $10,000. This is for a contracted medical director for our substance use disorder pilot program. So you provided funding back in FY24 to help support the planning of this program. And so right now we're in the process of working with OHA and Pacific Source to be licensed to be able to bill for services. We need some gap funding to help us with that in order to get to that point, because it takes about 6 to 9 months before you're actually able to bill for services. And part of that requirement is to have a contracted medical director. And so for $10,000 for that contract is what that will cost us. It provides 2 to 4 hours of medical consultation as necessary. And it's just a requirement of Oregon administrative rules before you're able to bill for services. The nice thing about this is once we get to that point where we're able to bill OHP and Pacific Source, we don't anticipate that we will need continued funding for this because the $10,000 will be able to be made up through billing for those services.
A question, in our review in the last meeting, you indicated that the funds provided to community justice had not yet been spent.
Yeah.
Have those now been spent?
They'll be spent before the end of the fiscal year. We're just working on the final phases of that implementation for the director who's working on that program. So they will have been spent before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, and
Yeah.
this priority to $10,000 is for something different to continue.
It's another part of that. It's the part that's required to be able to implement the billing that we work out for that process. Yeah.
And is that a previous program that was something out of, I don't know, Ohio, or wasn't that that was
The
something?
training, the original training that you provided
Yeah.
was UCI is University of Cincinnati, the Corrections Institute is who provides the curriculum for that program.
Okay, so this is still part of that program.
That will be, so that's literally the curriculum that supports the substance use disorder treatment. So this is the medical director, it's a Oregon administrative rule requirement to get to that point where you can start billing. You have to have this in place before you can actually start billing.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's about a 6 to 9 month process, which has been, we just wish it could go faster because it would really help us, but that's a short timeline they said, but we're on track for that 6 to 9 months right now. And then we do have a request on the adult parole and probation side. In Deschutes County, there's about 1,000 people on supervision. 17% of those are identified as women, and then the majority of those, about 80%, were brought to the system with some alcohol or drug related charges. Usually it's either property or just a possession charge. Now with Measure 110, most of the time it's a property that's connected to a possession charge. And then one of the focuses here is gender responsivity. So going kind of more into what that means in terms of parole and probation, research has shown that women enter the justice system, especially parole and probation services or community correction services, from different pathways than we think of men. 80% of the individuals that are on our system are men, so the system itself has been designed in a way to support that 80%. And the research is really showing that there's other ways that women enter this system, and really we need to focus on that. So we have recently launched gender responsive services. So we literally provide gender specific caseloads. We provide gender specific CBT services. So really focusing on those specific pathways for the women entering that system. And so part of this, we're asking for funds to support a contract with the organization. It's called Imperfectly. They're a local organization here in Deschutes County. And they provide basically women in recovery and in reentry specific services to really kind of help support them in their recovery from substance abuse and while they're on probation. They use evidence-based practices and really focus on that behavior chain. They provide anything from financial classes, they provide recovery mentor support, they provide just skills that general treatment programs don't provide. So we're requesting $20,000 to support 32 workshop hours. That'll serve on average probably 15 to 20 women each month. And that will be used as just an additional support to what we're offering as CBT services. It's community-based, and it's actually, they use peer recovery support. So they use individuals who've been through our system. And many times they actually probably have been through Deschutes County specific system. And so they'll utilize those individuals to help these individuals kind of complete their either their treatment, their substance abuse treatment, or help them complete their supervision. So that is our third priority request. And then any questions?
Have you worked with First Light before?
Yeah, we work with them on our adult side.
And how has that gone?
It's gone very well. Yeah, we've worked with the individual that runs that program for about 4 years. First Light launched about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And so they have quite an extensive background in just recovery support and recovery mentor. And so it's really nice to have that. They've worked for Best Care, they've worked for Pfeiffer, they used to work for the drug court. The original recovery mentor for Deschutes County Drug Court is actually the individual who is running that program. And so we've had some really good positive, and so we're actually really excited to look at it from the youth level, because actually in Deschutes County, there is very few peer-based recovery services. And so having that, we just think will be invaluable support. The research really shows that it can positively impact youth. And so we're just hopeful that that will be something we can look at. So, yeah.
Other questions?
How does that intersect with the, I'm kind of confused. So you guys, Cincinnati, whatever, how does this all fit together?
The SUD treatment itself is actually drug abuse use disorder treatment. So it's actual treatment. The recovery mentor services is just support to help them through treatment. So a recovery mentor will meet with them outside of treatment. They'll take them to classes and other things that are based in sobriety. So they're like positive pro-social environment for that individual that they wouldn't get anywhere else. And then they'll provide other skill building activities outside of just the treatment itself, because treatment is, can be as little as 3 hours a week up to possibly 9 hours a week. But that mentorship can kind of, whenever they need that help or that person they can call, they have that person's phone number and they'll reach out, and they're available for them just to provide that extra support. So it's really in conjunction with treatment. And on the adult side, that model is used regularly and it's showing really good success on the adult side. And then recent research shows that on the juvenile side, it's really valuable as well. And so it would be the first time we'd be able to actually offer that in Deschutes County, at least for our side of things. Yeah.
I guess my only question is with, you mentioned Measure 110, and with the passage of Measure 110, they took 80% of the cannabis tax dollars and put towards rehab and, and then the rest is left over into the program, but, are you eligible for any of those dollars? 'Cause
We are
it's
not.
Definitely a bigger pool.
Yeah, we are not as a county entity eligible for those dollars. From our side of things, I know our behavioral health department has been able to really tap into those resources. So we reach out to them and whenever we can for those resources to try to help provide that additional support. But specifically, we have not been eligible for those, for this type of programming.
Matt, do you have any questions?
No questions from me.
Okay. Anything else? Okay,
Awesome, thanks everyone.
thank you. Next up is community development.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for having me here today. Again, Angie Havner, Community Development and the Manager for Coordinated Services, which is permit technicians on the permitting side for planning, building, and site, and then code enforcement is what we're here today to talk about. Code enforcement is so thankful, you guys. Last year you gave us $20,000 for our program. That money was used for staff hours and time. We're again asking for $20,000 this year that will also be used for time and boots on the ground. It allows us to prioritize a partnership with the sheriff's department. And so how that works is partner with the sheriff's department with Detective Miller. His team will let code enforcement know the day before approximately that they're in need of a partnership. I will prioritize staff. Just so you, for perspective, we've had about 733 cases submitted last fiscal year. Of those, we had about 8 in partnership with the sheriff's office. So that money allows us to prioritize that time to go towards the marijuana related cases. So they will be boots on the ground. We'll know the day before. Staff will be pulled out from their daily working relations, set aside, meet Detective Miller's team on the ground. And then we will go in with eyes looking for violations for planning on site and buildings. So of those would be planning violations are RV occupancy, commercial use and residential land, and zoning, any wetland, floodplain violations, those kind of land use items. And the next scope is on-site violations. So we're looking at unauthorized disposal. So is there sewage on the ground? Is there illegal septic systems? Any environmental issues that way? And then our scope then goes to building violations. So lots of illegal electrical installations for safety that we've seen, mechanical installations for venting, lighting, illegally built structures, multiple dwellings, those kind of violations. From that, what my team does is sometimes we're out there for an hour, sometimes we're out there for half a day, just depending on complexity. Sometimes there's 1 staff member, sometimes there's 2, just depending on the scope. And then we will take photos and come back and then send the property owner as who is responsible for bringing those violations into compliance. So then code enforcement will send out a pre-enforcement notice to the property owner with documentation and zoning violations that are need to be enforced. Property owners, depending on what it is, can go a couple different ways. If there's sewage on the ground, we would go straight to circuit court for an injunction. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is violations that we can give up to 90 days for correction. Some of them come into compliance quickly and work really well. The other extreme of that is we would go to an administrative hearing, which would be months of coordination with property owner and to bring the violations into compliance. So the funds that we're asking for today really are to allow staff to prioritize these cases for the safety in our community. And so far the partnership with the sheriff's office has been amazing. I mean, we've really grown together. I think we've learned from each other. We produce data, extra data if needed, and we were together as recent as last week. So that was a great experience, and I'm just really thankful for the funds that you've given us today.
Thank you. Any questions?
So of your 733, 8 were police involved, do you have an idea of how many of those had substance or marijuana on the property?
So that the marijuana part was more through taken care of through the sheriff's office. So code enforcement would come in thereafter. So I'm not sure about that.
And then I know last year, CDD was pulling from reserves. Are we back on track for budget this year?
Code enforcement is meeting budget this year. Yep. Yeah, thank you for that.
And Matt, any questions? Okay.
Nothing for me.
I guess my main question is, you know, with the landowners that, been giving citations, you said some come within compliance quicker than others. You know, I mean, part of the reason I think, our original intention with that grant was because of some of the ones out there who weren't coming into compliance. And how do you feel, your success rate, or, you know, do you have more
Yeah.
teeth in those enforcement?
Yeah, so we have revised our program as a whole this last year to allow some more teeth in enforcement. So it allows the process to move more efficient to get to the administrative hearing. We changed the way we communicate with homeowners. We coordinate a lot with legal more now than ever. And so I anticipate all of these cases coming into compliance in short order. Due to efficiencies we've made to the program, not just for marijuana specific cases, but for code enforcement as a whole. Thank you.
All right. On to the next, we've got health services. Okay, sorry.
Hi, no worries. I think Jen's, thanks, Jen.
Yep, I'll give you the mouse so you can control it.
Oh, cool.
Matt, can you see that?
No, I don't have it on my screen.
That's why it is something funky about this particular. Wait. Maybe I don't know how to do it then.
Last time for lipstick, Jen, we had to like log into Zoom, open up Zoom, maximize Zoom really quick. And then go to share screen.
Yeah.
It's like the one in green at the bottom.
Thank you.
And then click on
I can do this one over here. Can you see it now, Matt?
Still nothing. Okay, there it goes.
Do you see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, you just have to remind me after it's over. So we can't see. Oh, you guys can't see. You guys are now experiencing my full technological inability. Let's try this again. Well, now you can see it, but Matt can't see it. Is that right? Matt, can you see it now?
I can't.
It's very, this particular setup is really challenging.
If you are in the Zoom option.
How about now, Matt?
I can see it.
Great.
Good job. Good job.
Thanks,
Jen.
Now you may have the mouse.
It's out, Jen.
I'll take any victory.
Tell you.
Alright, I was gonna put it in presenter mode, but I don't want to, just in case. So, hi, I'm Jess Nyworth, with Health Services. Thank you for having me. I work for Jessica Jacks, who is usually here at these meetings, but I have a particular love of cannabis prevention and background in cannabis, so I'm excited to be here today. I wanted to start a little bit about kind of what we know works in prevention and cannabis use prevention. This is a kind of a look at the CADCA 7. If you are familiar with prevention, this is a weird term that is bandied about often. It's essentially 7 strategies for creating effective community change. So there's environmental strategies, that's about shaping policy, physical design, enforcement, access and barriers. essentially the things that are in our community that we don't typically notice until there's a problem. Or if you remember smoking in bars, and then there was a policy change and now you go home and your hair doesn't smell like cigarettes and you're like, oh, I forgot about this. That's one of our environmental strategies. We also have individual strategies like sharing information, support, and education. So support like to make, say you want to access after school activities, making sure there's transportation, or and so young people have support and to get to the activities they enjoy and appreciate, and they have support to do that, or sharing information and education. So we know these are important when it comes to substance misuse prevention. There's a ton of research that talks about these effective strategies. We are fortunate in cannabis in that much of these yellow environmental strategies are actually taken care of from the state and from our city and county about, you know, time, place, manners, when places are open, who can gain access to them, that we don't see in necessarily alcohol or tobacco, but we do see there's a lot of protections and regulations and restrictions around cannabis. And so what happens at the county and city level is we tend to focus more on the individual strategies using community-based approaches. So what we focus on cannabis prevention is social marketing and education. So social marketing is mass marketing for behavior change. And what we want folks to know is essentially we're talking to parents to start a conversation with your child, because there's a lot of research out there that has protective factors that protect young people from risk behaviors, from starting them early, or to making, you know, using their critical thinking skills, and protecting young people from moving into substance misuse or abuse early, or kind of like early in their years or even later, can turn into kind of disorders. So we talk to parents to say, prevent your kids from starting to use alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, or other substances, is to talk with them early and often. And it may sound simple, but actually those connections, like I said, are a strong protective factor. We've got research in monitoring, so basically just knowing where your kids are, role modeling behaviors, building warm and supportive relationship, parent-child communication, and then awareness of peer relationships. And unless you're having conversations with your kids, it's hard to know a lot of these things, right? So we focus on social marketing and education. So those are specific parent tools, trainings to have effective conversations, community workshops. And last year, utilizing funds from the Cannabis Advisory Panel, we were able to develop 4 social marketing media campaign spots, or PSAs, targeting parents and guardians, encouraging them to have those conversations with their kids, while also directing them to vetted resources and support. Through this, you know, we were able to tap our Shared Future Coalition, which is a group of stakeholders in Deschutes County that helped create and review the PSAs. They're bringing their specific expertise. And we also are stacking these PSAs on other approaches. We know it has to be part of a comprehensive approach. We do some environmental strategies like smoke-free places, school-based education through our Healthy Schools program, or curriculum review, helping protocol change if there's like a substance misuse violation at schools. Instead of doing out-of-school suspension, we roll them back into school to have more connections with adults, and then other family supports. So I'm gonna hone in on our social marketing PSAs for a little bit, as this is the bulk of what we've been talking about with the panel here. We were able to launch the Start the Conversation campaign, and the last time I was here, we showed some spots from it and some results from last year. We're hoping to continue the good work that the CAP has been able to fund for our, particularly for our English speakers, speaking audience. So our campaign messages here is that parents are the #1 influence on whether or not a young person chooses to use alcohol, cannabis, or other drugs before the age of 21. And starting the conversation about substance misuse early and keep the lines of communication open during childhood and their teen years is really essential. So we created these 4 spots. to communicate the message. We disseminated across cable, broadcast. We actually had an ad run during the Grammys, if you saw last time, which was really cool. We're on streaming platforms like Tubi, Hulu, Prime. We're on YouTube video pre-rolls, gaming pre-rolls, website banner ads, social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram. And each spot ends with an invitation to visit the Shared Future Coalition's website, which has parent resources on them. And actually last year, because of the funds you granted us, we were able to leverage a partnership with the Oregon Department of Transportation to put out a joint message about prevention of impaired driving, which is actually what this image is from. And they had $10,000 to put toward this PSA, which if you're familiar with marketing campaigns, that is nothing, unfortunately, because these are expensive. But because we already had this platform and this message that existed in a relationship with our media vendor, we were able to co-create this campaign with them and roll it into our existing campaign efforts. Last year, we reached 65,000 households. We had over 2 million impressions of the campaign. We had 97 and 98% video completion rates, which the industry standard is actually around 70. So people really stayed on to watch our videos to completion, which was great. And in this last year, we actually identified a need amongst our Spanish speaking audiences. We need to further explore some effective communication platforms and messaging for around these prevention topics like cannabis prevention among our Spanish speaking audiences. We're currently leveraging other grant funding to assess the efficacy of the campaign and reach among our Spanish speaking parents to improve these materials and engagement with these audiences. And we're planning to use these assessment findings to improve the Start the Conversation Spanish language campaign in this next fiscal year, and so our broader substance misuse prevention and suicide prevention work. So the other piece that we have done with cannabis use prevention is talking about education and parent resources. So we know behavior change campaigns have to be stacked on other strategies. Just seeing an ad is not going to make you, change your behavior. Just seeing an ad can drive you to be curious and to find other resources, have conversations, find other places to find this information. And that's why we revamped our Shared Future Coalition page last year to provide more education embedded resources to parents, guardians, and families to talk to their children about substances and other risk behaviors. And we also offer skill building at community events that we host or participate in, essential for achieving some of those population outcomes. Like I said, we launched this website last year, relaunched it, and I shared these metrics with you last time I was here, but the campaign drew 7 times more users to the website, and the more than 50% of the website users spent their time on the parent resources page. So we are seeing that it is driving parents and families to find resources that are useful for them. We also saw 4,000 clicks through to the website, and that click-through rate is higher than, again, industry averages of clicking the ad to get to the website. And we also saw increased downloads of those parent resource materials. So I lost my mouse. All that to say, it was successful. We really were kind of blown away by the response we got. I know my team is amazing and they work really well with community partners to make sure that the messages we're coming up with not only are based in evidence and research, but are reflective of the community that we're in and the population we're trying to serve and connect with. And it's been successful. And so we're asking for $60,000 to continue the parent engagement PSAs for our English PSAs with countywide reach. While media campaigns are not evergreen, they could be used for 2 to 3 years without needing messaging refresh. And so this last fiscal year will probably end for our English messaging, but that just means a revamp of the ads themselves, not necessarily getting rid of the campaign. We do plan to continue it. We're also on multiple platforms to reach our target audience, and we'll continue that in the next year. We're also planning to update our Spanish language PSAs. We're in the middle of an assessment right now to see how they're landing with our Spanish speaking audiences and parents and families. Are they resonating? And so we get that information back and are planning to either update, adapt, or if we need a total reshoot because they're just not landing, we will do that for our Spanish speaking audiences. And then dissemination of those updated PSAs, and then continue to measure that exact success. Gathering those key performance indicators it always helps us to better target to our audience and update materials when needed. We will continue to run the website, but that is coming out of other grant funds. Our other kind of strategies that we're working on are coming out of other grant funds. This funding we're asking for is specifically for these public service announcements, these PSAs, as part of our social marketing campaign to bring awareness to parents and families and then drive them back to resources that we've already created.
The original development of the PSAs was did you carve out some of the first year funding from the recommendation that the CAB gave to the Board of Commissioners to actually create those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the CAB is the Shared Future Coalition Advisory Board, and it's funded from federal dollars for representation across 12 sectors in our community. So we've got law enforcement, we've got business members, we've got folks from all like representing all different sectors in our community who we often bring them data of what's going on in our community, what young people are telling us, what our student health survey is reflecting, and they make recommendations about what they think is needed to best meet the needs of our community. And this was one of the initial pushes that said we need more engagement with parents, and we need more not only resources but awareness that you don't have to have this big scary drug talk, but actually just starting conversations with your kids opens up the door of communication ongoing, whether you're talking about cannabis or you're talking about sex, and that you're using the same skills for all of those conversations. So we were really fortunate that we have this coalition to help us make these choices and in an informed way to reflect our community. And then the CAP was able to give us funding to actually make it happen.
And I'm wondering, is there a way, which, with the school board website or whatever, is there a way to somehow have some of those resources put on there? So when parents are checking on stuff with schools in general, because maybe they're not watching television or listening to the radio or whatever.
Yeah.
To add that component to it.
Yeah, we're not on the school board site, but we do, because of our connection with the Healthy Schools program, which is they have 50% funded from the county, 50% actually funded from Ben Lapine schools, to have public health professionals in all the middle school and high schools in the county. Because of that relationship, we actually have parent newsletter articles and conversations, links and events that go out. We host parent events. We've hosted a parent event related to another topic, but in each high school in Ben Lapine schools this school year, with resources that include resources for this and the marijuana talk kit, which is often what comes through these conversation tips and tools. So I think it could be useful to talk to the school board, but we certainly are reaching parents through the school network.
That and your timing is perfect, because right now there's been this big push for Oregon for non-smoking.
Yeah.
There's been all this media about make Oregon smoke free, period. So the timing on all of this is like unbelievable. What's that? Tobacco free. There's a big push for tobacco free. make Oregon tobacco free.
Yeah. Yeah, and we often see, sometimes the strategies like really layer really well, and sometimes they're coming at cross purposes. But often, when we're talking about adolescence, we all want young people to make informed decisions, and we all want young people to take healthy risks, and to be able to, have the built-in protective factors that are gonna keep them from, even if they are experimenting with something, not end up having to, need treatment later on. And so knowing that building all these protective factors in our schools, in our families, in our communities, all really contribute to this comprehensive approach.
Good question. Did you have any more specifics on the number of Spanish speaking PSAs and why those are seeing a less successful rate?
Yeah, so what we have right now are essentially English language PSAs that have been translated into Spanish. And that's not best practice. Best practice is transcreation. So it's essentially either creating a campaign that speaks both culturally to English speaking and Spanish speaking folks, or creating a campaign that speaks to English speaking folks and creating a separate campaign that speaks to Spanish speaking folks. There are a lot of cultural differences and a lot of different norms about how we parent. And that's going to look different from neighborhood to neighborhood, right? And it certainly looks different across cultures. And so from my understanding, this happened before I came on board, but from my understanding is that there wasn't a lot of local resources to do transcreation of Spanish media. And so we're investigating how we can tap into some state resources that the Oregon Health Authority uses to partner with our local folks to make sure that we are creating culturally relevant PSAs for Spanish speaking populations. Now, I don't have data that says it's not effective. We just know this is not best practice, and that's why we're doing the assessment now to see, okay, we created these campaigns, are they effective with your community? And getting the results back probably the end of mid-July.
Thank you.
Andrew, did you have a question?
Well, in the information and in what you presented, it says that you use several different media platforms. I'm assuming, as you mentioned, TV, radio, social media. Which one of those outlets is your highest cost?
Well, typically TV is the highest cost, but because we are a government agency, government agencies and nonprofits get like for every 3 ads they run, they give us 1 free. So it ends up being not as expensive than typically what most TV buys would be. It is one of the smallest actually slivers of where we put our funding. It does get the most impressions, but it has limited time when we're speaking to parents. So we actually get the most bang for our buck out of Facebook. So we see, I don't know what it is with Deschutes County, but Deschutes County loves Facebook. We have our platform engagement on Facebook through our Facebook ads and banner ads is higher, way higher than industry average. And so that ends up being, we spend a lot of there and a lot of pre-rolls for videos that have meta tags for our target audience.
Since your presentation last year, I can't open my Facebook without the shared future. That is marketed to the nth degree.
Your phone was listening.
Do you have an idea of what it may cost to create a created Spanish edition of the entire program?
Yeah, so individual campaigns locally typically run between 5,000 and 7,000 per ad spot. Most of the dollars are actually going to ad buys. So if we have 4 spots now, if we were to recreate all of them, probably a conservative estimate would be, 20 to 35, 20 to 35,000 for each campaign ad spot.
And that's including the like rehash of the actual material?
That would be from scratch. So
Right.
it's likely gonna be less expensive than that. It kind of just depends, unfortunately, on what our assessment tells us is how much did this resonate? And if it's a start from scratch, this didn't hit us at all, which I don't anticipate it will. Then I would expect between 20 and 35 for ad spots. But again, those last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, to be run on all kinds of platforms.
I think last year, when you guys presented, you were talking about another kind of connection to the vaping. Cause I've noticed in my professional experience, a lot of the marijuana use is hidden in
Babes.
vapes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the smoke-free thing I
Yeah.
think is coming through is,
Yeah.
and our schools are seeing this as well, is they're confiscating vapes from students, but they don't know what's in it. And it's not their job to, cause I mean, and does it matter? I'm not sure, because they're underage, yeah. And so what are we are we changing the way we're responding to different substances because of the method of use? Or are we responding to adolescents using substances with the same kind of strategies of increased connection and information and decision making and what, regardless of it's tobacco or it's cannabis or it's alcohol or it's something else? But yes, we are definitely seeing it. And went back in my day when, early legalization, the vapes are big clunky things and now they're definitely not.
Yeah, they're really easily hidden. Today at school, we had a student that had been unconscious in the restroom for over 45 minutes from an overdose with edibles, apparently. That's not something I've ever heard of before, but they were 13 years old.
Yeah, that's really scary and it's atypical for someone to even prefer edibles at that age, but you cannot overdose and die from cannabis. It doesn't hit you in the same way that heroin or fentanyl will, but it certainly can cause a lot of distress and hospitalization, emergency department visits for anyone who takes edibles, particularly since it takes so long to hit you. You keep eating it because it hasn't hit you yet, and when
Just like
you're
the
young and naive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see this a lot with naive consumers as.
On that note, and with the vaping and smoke-free, first of all, I wanted to compliment you on your use of the word cannabis, and I saw the M word in there one time.
Is it in here?
Yeah, it was on a slide, but I just figured you hadn't updated it.
Oh, it's right, it's on an image.
Yeah,
I can't delete that one.
but you use the cannabis word, which I think, is more appropriate nowadays, especially, as you pointed out, the yellow circles on top of the one slide that, the cannabis industry's done a better job of physical space design and barriers to entry than maybe even the alcohol industry. But what I actually see going on now is kids are accessing it off the internet. And they're buying THC products that are THC or counterfeit products out there. They're buying hemp derived THC that now the loophole is it's only 3%, but if they make the container big enough, that 3% still adds up if you eat the whole box.
And it's 3% Delta 9 THC and that,
So,
so
and
it's
it's
8,
Delta 9
7,
coming from hemp, so it's no different. And the Delta 8 thing going on, which people are having some adverse effects with the Delta 8, so in education, I think language is very important and using the cannabis term rather than marijuana, because now we're seeing it's not just, as you pointed out, the THC cannabis industry. I could hop on my phone right now and probably order some to this room and
Yeah,
so it's much broader now, it's ever evolving, so I want to make sure that you guys are educated on that as
Yeah.
well. 'Cause to your point, you don't know what it is in that vape anymore, and if you're under 21, you shouldn't even have the vape.
yeah,
So, yeah, good for you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is ever evolving. That is the perfect term for it, and our regulations have not left room for that evolution. But they will, as new states are legalizing. I think hopefully it'll start to close some of those gaps that prohibition creates. Because we don't see bootleg alcohol really. But we certainly are seeing bootleg cannabis. So it'll continue until we have a sea change. But within that sea change, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of confusion and a lot of taboo.
But you seem to be up on. It's ever changing.
Never changing.
I clearly am not, so I will make sure going forward in our meeting materials that I use the word cannabis and not marijuana. I actually I put my meeting notes in earlier and I changed yours to cannabis because I noticed that change, but my bad on that one.
Just
Try to lock that in.
Thank you, Jess.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
that
you.
presentation. Okay,
It's clearly over 7 minutes, so.
That was very good. I don't know, Dustin speaking on behalf of Joe. Joe got all the same information all the other presenters did, so.
I didn't know that. I didn't plan on it, but
He just sent me that one email. I did respond back and asked him for a one pager and I didn't get it. So the email on the back of your packet is the entire information I received from the sheriff's office.
was he supposed to be coming?
He wants.
Very.
He didn't respond either way, but I sent, all departments got the exact same form of communication
Okay.
for tonight.
Yeah, I can't really speak to it because he does all our finance stuff. I do know that we applied for another additional grant. Through CJC and we were told that we were granted that grant, but we weren't told how much. So we might have, they're gonna sit down, we're gonna actually figure out how much money that we actually are going to get in that grant. It's helping to do some other things as far as some, a lot of it's training. We bring in new people on, making sure we get people trained up on doing the job. So we have training, we end up buying another dump trailer, just equipment, different things like that, that we've ended up using that money for, so. But as far as this goes, like he said, because there was a little bit of an increase, we could use a little bit more for the one position. We still have me, Tony, we're actually tapping in and using an investigator through the DA's office. I think some of you guys might have met him, Jake Chandler came to one of these meetings.
The last one.
He did through the DA's office. He's been doing a whole lot more with our team. So the expenses have gone up for that just a little bit. But again, status quo is kind of where we're looking for the funding. If it works, it works. If not, we'll make it up. So
You guys still just as crazy busy going from 50 hemp licenses to just 8? Yeah, there's 2.
yeah, there's only 8. And the big reason for that is because Southern Oregon primarily went into a state of emergency with their grows that they were having, and they had to put a big lockdown on all their hemp licensing. So what happened was you could get a hemp license if you successfully completed the program the year before with your pre-harvest testing and everything else. And so if you were essentially a good actor and have that, you could grandfather into the next year. They put it on freeze last year. So what happened was, and the other thing is our testing tools. When people were using the mask of hemp, we did not test it. We did not say if it was actual, THC cannabis or if it was actual hemp. And so now we have the ability to do that where it's gotten out. And so I think people are starting to see in the industry that if I put a hemp license on my property and they're so rare right now, I'm drawing more attention to myself. So we have seen an increase in what we've probably seen more of an increase in is medical. People have started to go medical because they can hide it. But for instance, the one that we went out with last week, it was a medical grow. But it was, and we wrote into it because it was egregious and caught up shipping packages back to Virginia. So that's a problem. So, but the grows that we're having to do it differently with the way that we gauge the size and the power usage and have to articulate essentially they're growing egregiously what they're supposed to be. But the industry has changed. I think last time I presented, did I present last time or the time before?
Last time.
Yeah, the industry has changed and slowed down a little bit, but we aren't getting as much of the hemp style hoop house style grows.
Inside.
Yes. Yes. So because they moved inside, it is harder to find. We're restricted by certain investigative techniques we can use. But we're still seeing them. We're still hitting them, we're still seeing them, there's still a lot out there. But like I mentioned in the last meeting, it's kind of what we want. Like we are starting to hit our objective. Things are slowing down. We're not getting as much of an influence as we were before, but there'll always be the job. You mentioned legalizing across the states. What we're seeing is that a lot of these places that are shipping actually have legalized, but they haven't set in any kind of groundwork or laws to how to implement it. So for instance, in Virginia, you can possess, you can't buy, and you can't grow. So like, there's no implementation, right? So, but we have people that will have the demand. And so still we are shipping, I say we, Oregon is shipping to these states that are not necessarily legal. So it will change if they do legalize it across the board. There will always be a black market. It may not be as big. It may make things a lot easier, but there will always be a black market.
Like a smaller gray market, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And like you said, prohibition, like people aren't really doing their own, people brew their own beer or stuff like that. It's not big. They're not doing it for money making. So I'm curious to see how it continues to go and change, but we're seeing a lot more just indoor stuff. So the industry's changing, but
I think I'd like to excuse our guest speakers. Thank you very much for coming and presenting and sharing your ideas with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you.
You guys want food to go? We have. No one's taking it. Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm gonna take some for my son, so I don't.
I have saran wrap, I've got some
Okay.
oil. Any means necessary. Okay, great, perfect.
All right, how would you like to open the discussion for this year?
Well, first off, there's more money asked for than we have.
Yes. You said 185,000 and change, right, Jen?
182.
That was last year. This year's 185.
185.
Okay.
It's approximation, but that's what
Right.
the forecast is.
And the total,
Is 235.
235.
And I'll just point out too, I was looking through the meeting minutes, maybe I should put this as an agenda item, but the very last meeting. Agenda item last in January was you guys talked about the PSA outreach campaign. And it said CAP members will consider recommending allocating tax revenue funds towards some type of public education campaign during the next meeting. So that was still on the books too, if you wanted to consider that proposal for board consideration as well, that would be an additional to this.
That was,
The one pool is 185 total.
Right. So should we talk about that? Either do a yay or an A on the idea of a PSA for kind of the general population within the county?
well, was there gonna be a PSA or was that gonna be something that was put on something
Well-
with utilities? I don't remember how we were gonna do that.
I haven't really decided, but you know, anything that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners would probably have a budget requirement to it, even if it's a mailing, it's still mailing costs, right? So, you know, based on what you're saying, I don't know personally, I don't think that we need to spend a very small portion of our pool to do that. From my perspective.
Can chime in. I think that they're already having a lot of success with what they're doing by themselves. I think I kind of agree with you, like, let's just let them decide to do with the money what they feel is best.
They being who?
Community development,
Health services.
Yeah.
or no, sorry, health services.
In their PSA.
Oh, well, yeah, this would not be a part of the health services. This would be something that the county would be communicating to,
Landowners.
The-
The landowner thing.
well, right, the landowners.
Yeah.
So the general population within the county.
And what's the message?
Message is, you are responsible for anything that happens on your property, and if you lease your property to someone with nefarious ideas on growing,
Yeah, you're just as reasonable, yeah.
yeah,
And what we're doing right now is innocent owner letters. So if we do hit a location, we serve that owner with an innocent owner letter saying, hey, maybe we didn't go after taking your house or leaving your house for this. But if you're found to be doing bad things again on this property and not turning your head, then we're gonna probably go towards leaving your house, essentially. So we're doing essentially innocent owner letters to everybody we encounter as we best.
And we have the right to, we're just assuming that you're innocent. First of all.
Essentially, you're put on notice that, hey, you're warned, if you do this again, now we're gonna go after some different ways to take away your actual means to commit the crime or let people commit the
I
crime.
mean,
So
it sounds to me like between the code enforcement and you guys tamping things out fairly well in the agricultural part of the county.
it's gotten better.
yeah.
It's gotten
But-
better, it's still out there.
For instance, and our code guys, man, they kicked it up this last year. Like, they kicked it up a lot. They'll send me, she'll ask me, how many do you need? And
Yeah,
if I have 3 locations, send me 1 to each location or 2. We just did one towards the end of the year, end of last year, beginning of this year, that they walked on and they were excited. I think I mentioned this in my last presentation, but they were like, you have code violations on this place for 12 years and we have not been able to get on property. So we got them on property so that they could go forward with what they needed for documentation. Our communication, our relationship has gone great. She has sat down and a couple of her people that work with her have sat down with our analysts. They've given us access to their complaint system. So now we can search, we were finding that there were complaints related to the marijuana, greenhouses, odor, all kinds of different things, right? All kinds of different complaints that were being closed in less than 24 hours. And so nobody really looked at them. And so now we're going back, we're actually finding historical ones that we saw in 2019, 2020 that they got that we never saw because of lack of communication. And we're developing cases on them. And so we're gonna be doing one next week or next month, in 3 weeks. That was based on a complaint that came in like in 2020. And so we're kind of going back through the backlog. So just our communication and how fluid we've been working together has been great. So.
you know, and I guess my feelings on it, since we're already over what we have to spend. That maybe spending money on sending a message to landowners, which I think they've already gotten the message because these guys have come down on a few of them. And I even read in the paper, you know, there's a few of them that wrote, we didn't know what was going on there. I think you've done a great job of getting that message out. I would rather see it go to more enforcement, more code enforcement, kids than a PSA that I don't know is.
For a very small population, you know, really. I
That's
mean,
actually shrinking,
right,
you know.
Right.
We had discussed what going through the assessor's office for taxes, but then like, how many people get that and actually take time to read through that stuff because they're too worried about the taxes at that point. So like, we didn't know like how many people are actually going to take the time to read that blurb in there. It
And
will
if
lay
you're
on a
doing
counter and
something
somebody will see
legal,
it.
you're probably not gonna read it, you know, it's like,
And I think they have to put more of the money for the person, because now it's indoors and in the medical, you're not seeing the big ag people hiding it in the hemp anymore, which that PSA would be direct from that. Just my own thoughts are, that's been part of it.
so let's do a vote on dollars to a PSA to landowners. Anybody in favor of?
I think we table it and just keep it on the table if things go wonky. Like I
Okay,
said,
but for this budgeting recommendation, anybody in favor of? And Matt, I'll look at you.
No.
Wasn't part of that, all, I missed the last name because of that, but, we were talking about, county website.
But there is a
Instead of
county
the-
website.
Instead of
You
the
can go to the
printout,
county website, and report your.
No, like
neighbor if
this-
You think they're.
more of the PSA type.
So we have a Canfax site that our DA's office, we started developing during our first grant. That goes out and really it's, I don't know how many, I could give you the history on like how much it clicks and hits traffic and everything. Yeah, I don't have social media though. But we get complaints through there every once in a while. But that is a website that's available to a lot of people in regards to educating them on that, but.
Where the PSA would be outgoing to social or TV or whatever.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we ever like, further seeded that. I feel like we're in this weird point in society where we're getting overloaded with this type of information on a constant and it becomes, like negative news where you are able to just kind of drown it out, like, oh, there's another war started, you know.
Right.
I'll also throw in on that, in your considerations, it sounds like you guys are all leaning toward the same thing. But that for a PSA or any materials generated would need to be generated during the committee meeting, there's very limited staff time to be able to do something outside of this, so if the intent was to move forward with some sort of PSA outreach campaign on behalf of the CAP committee, that work would have to be done either by a subcommittee from the CAP or the work done here in this committee. And it would also go before the board on whether or not that's something they wanted, no idea what their leadings would be there, but just wanted to put kind of some of that procedural work on your radar as you're discussing this as well.
Thank you, and I don't volunteer for that.
Now, since you put it down. Well, and we already have to cut 40 grand out of our.
Yeah. All right, so let's start going through these. So why don't we just do it in order? Community justice, they had 3 different priorities. My understanding is they're not asking for all of them. I know they would be appreciative if we could afford.
What was the breakdown on that again? I didn't
If
catch
you-
it because they kept asking.
25, 10, and 20.
Yeah,
25, 10 and 20.
yeah,
What did we fund last year?
It's fine.
yeah, I think it was 20.
And how short are we
Yep.
from
They can pull
covering
it.
all the requests?
Well, so we have 185 and all the requests today are 235.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I think they were also, I think community justice, I'm just pulling up now, also requested more last time and got a considerable
Less.
cut.
yeah,
I'm just pulling up that meeting minutes real quick,
Okay.
thank you.
they requested last time.
That was the weird training thing, right?
Yeah, that was.
They just, actually, I'm sorry, they just requested 25,000 last time,
We only cut it by.
specifically for that University of Cincinnati training and
And didn't they
certification.
say that essentially that training was gonna train very few people, be fairly ineffective, is what it sounded like, the presentation sounded like to me, if I recall.
Yeah,
And
So they were
they
funded.
haven't spent the money yet.
They still haven't spent money.
Right, so March or April is what was
Right.
discussed in the minutes last time. And when I asked him, have you spent the money now? Because now we're in 3rd week of April. He's like, oh, well, soon, we're gonna spend it soon. So I'm a little concerned
I very good.
about awarding more. When I look
It's
at,
almost like they should wait till next cycle to ask for that because it takes so long.
right,
Well, and this first light is different, it's different than the original proposed thing that they're gonna train people, and that's why I was very confused. Cause this is a whole different kind of program than when they initially were gonna train people to do something.
well, but priority 2 on their page is the continuation of the training pilot that we funded them last time,
Okay, which still hasn't started,
which hasn't started.
okay.
And the $10,000 for priority 2 was to go for a contracted medical director that they need in order to get the money from another part of the state.
To build insurance.
Yeah,
I wonder what they're missing, like what component they're missing in order to be eligible for this 110 money? Because it kind of sounds like the things that they're trying to implement should qualify.
That's what I would think, that's why I asked that question,
Yeah.
because there's hundreds of millions of dollars in the 110 fund.
And did we get
And they're
did we
giving-
ever get an answer with the bill that the governor signed that's bringing back criminalization of controlled
Yes, it's
substances?
going to into effect in September.
So it goes into effect September 1, yeah,
the
but as far as the
money-
finances of
Money
money,
hasn't been touched.
I know, was there gonna be any redirect? This is my question.
It's same as, the money was same as it was, they didn't change the funding mechanism. It's still the same amount of cannabis tax going into it. Even though they,
And that was roughly
whatever
a
you would call it,
$500,000,
not
$600,000
reversed
debt
it,
trust.
adopted it, something like that, yeah.
Kind of weird. Question, I don't know if any of you are aware of, but is the community justice responsible for the program the county approved for sex offenders? Was that same connection?
It's the same department.
Okay.
There's
And that
not-
kind of failed yet?
I would rather not comment on that. It's all public comment, but that's not part of the cannabis
Right.
advisory panel business.
Yeah.
But any of those comments are available on the county board meetings.
I think the only reason I connected the two was just more of a accountability in what you do with success of program.
So if I can offer my opinion on their three priorities, I don't think priority 3 has a tight enough alignment to what our mission is. So my preference is not to approve any money for priority 3. Priority 1, since they've already done some work with First Light to direct $25,000 to that seems very expensive for yet another pilot program, an initial 1-year contract. I am leaning toward 10,000 for priority 2, if that's gonna get the initial funds that we recommended they get into practice, right, into actual, yeah.
And to get off the ground
Up
and get
with it.
started.
Really? Oh, there you
Sorry,
go.
I missed that. What did you say about the priority? I got the priority 3 and priority 2. What did you say about priority 4?
Priority 1, it's another first time launch program, initial 1-year contract. I don't think the fund should continue to go for brand new initiatives. I'd rather see something get in place and continue to be a success. Much like we're seeing from the behavioral health department. You know, they're getting results. We haven't seen any results yet from community justice. My own personal opinion.
I agree with you.
I would rather see them finish the projects they've already started with more funding than start another project. And my only concern with that is that they still haven't spent the money we gave them last time. Even though that was year 25, this is only 10 to actually get that program going. And, you know, they came in with 3 asks, and actually, if you only give them 1, then it doesn't work out.
They do.
Yeah.
But also that 10 says it really can be implemented for 6 to 9 months.
I know, that's the thing, that's the other part of it, it's like.
He was saying that was fast. He said he's on pace, they're on pace for that, but he was saying that that's a fast turnaround, if I heard him correctly. So it could be longer.
I think it's a fair point on them not spending the money in another pilot program. I will say that the First Light and mission, it sounds like, is something that's pretty valuable though. You know, when I was younger in my teens, like I was a cannabis user and other drugs as well, and I think having somebody with that contact and that experience for these kids to be able to talk to, I think would be a pretty valuable resource for them to have.
And you probably all know this, but just to refresh, the county's fiscal year is July 1, 2024 through June 2023 through June 30th, 2024. So we're still in our fiscal year, just, it
They still
didn't
have
end in
time.
December. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
They still
and
have
the
time.
reason why we're doing the budget talks now is because the board votes on the budget in May that goes into effect for next fiscal year, which starts July 1, 2024.
So if they do get any of, if community justice gets any of the funds that we recommend, those funds would be July 1.
For all departments, yep.
Right, for all departments.
The county's fiscal year is July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
I agree with you, Matt, with the recovery piece of it, but they haven't got the first part of the treatment thing started, so it's kind of like this cart in front of the horse kind of situation, is what I'm concerned about.
Thank you for clarifying the fiscal year too, because they're coming up to the end of the fiscal year now and they still haven't used that money. So that makes the timeline a little bit different if it was the fiscal year starting at the beginning of the year.
Mhm. Well, and First Light is a nonprofit organization, so they have their own fundraising. And I tried to look them up online today. I could only find a Facebook page. I couldn't find a website. I couldn't find any real information about them. And I should have printed it off, but I did see some reference to First Light, and I think Community Justice working on something back in 22, 23, and which is why I asked him, have you worked with them before? And he said in the adult arena, not in the youth arena. So again, so let's vote. Anybody agree with priority 1 on community justice? Okay. Anyone agree with priority 2 on community justice?
That breakdown that, because that was a presentation where it was 2 to 4 hours a month for a year for $10,000, was that the proposal?
That was
the
number 3.
That was number 3?
That was to get the medical officer on contract so they could do the insurance billing.
No, that was priority 2.
Oh, was it? I thought it was 3.
I just thought that was awfully pricey for bang for your buck. Potentially you get 24 hours for, and I think the price was $10,000.
Yeah, 10,000 to cover the cost of the contract during that period.
Right.
And the caveat there is though, they're required by
Yeah.
Oregon law that they have to have that in order to do their billing. And like he said, once it's up and running, they'll start recouping their costs in the way they bill. So that it would be like a one-time startup fee, essentially is the way it sounded to me.
So they're using these funds to bridge to the other funds.
The insurance.
So I'll ask again, just with your clarification on that, I'm glad you asked the question. Priority 2, anybody agreeing with priority 2 and directing? And I'm not saying this is a final decision. I'm just trying to weed through all 3 priorities from this department. Priority 2, I'm gonna say 2, 3, 4. Okay. And how many do we have?
5, 6, sorry, 2, 4, 7.
7. Okay.
Don't ask me numbers.
Priority 3, the adult parole and probation program. For clients who identify as women. Anybody interested in directing any funds toward that? This is not a decision to yes or no, but anyone passionate about that one? No, okay.
So I kind of have a question though, so we're doing, priority 1, 2, and 3. But the reality is they'll get a check in the end, and if they want to fund it towards 2, they'll put it towards 2 and put it towards 3. Because we don't dictate where that money goes, correct?
Good point.
Like, the reality is they're gonna get X amount of money and they can get what they can get done with that. Am I correct?
So it just goes
I would say
like a
yes.
general fund.
I'd say yes, no, we can specify that the recommendation is to provide $10,000 for priority 2, which covers blah, blah, blah costs. And then they will have to come back before you at some point and show how they use those dollars, but correct that there's no requirement for any department.
Right.
Just same thing, if we give the sheriff's office $100,000, we don't need proof of showing that check went to that salary, right? But the intent would be there, and I'd say when I'm bringing the budget recommendations before the board, I would say specifically what it is for, so. I would think that
So-
those
so
departments
essentially,
would do that.
Our recommendation would be X amount of dollars, we would like to see it go towards this.
Already tuning like to see some results, or here's the
Right.
results.
And that would be the follow-up next year, the presentation as to what to do with this.
Yeah.
Then at that point, we'd be making the same decision that we are now, saying, you haven't spent the money that we already gave. So
Okay.
it's just, that's how it's gonna be, right?
And I was talking to Angie too at the beginning of this meeting, and I think, and we can bring this up at the end, but this might help for next year at least. Is have the January meeting be the update and the budget request for the next year. Because when we do the April budget request, I was very new to the budget request last year, so kind of just did status quo what was happening, but you know, the budget department's like, what are you guys recommending? Because we are very late in the budget process, so it'll make sense to do it in January, but it could also be an accountability factor too, to be like, we were granted these amount of funds, this is how we're using it, and now we're asking for these funds. So I think it makes sense to do it all in one meeting next year, but we can discuss that at the end of this meeting too, or at a future meeting, but just something.
But I agree, because then we're not asking the department heads to.
Yes,
come
we have the
to
exact
us.
same department
Yeah,
heads coming
yeah,
back asking
yeah.
for the same thing
I mean,
that basically they
right.
reported on in January, so it's just kind of double
Right,
timing them, but it might be a nice connection for you guys to see how the funds were spent and see what they're asking for.
and maybe have a longer time on the meeting
Yeah, we
in January.
Yeah, nobody even skip the April meeting.
Yeah,
Figure it out.
yeah. Okay, moving on to CDD. Any discussion on this? They're asking for 20,000, which they asked for and received that amount last year.
I was just confused a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's additional staff, that they're just pulling code enforcement away from their normal priorities. So how does, I guess, how does that work? Like, they have this pot of money that, I mean, if you're not changing anyone's hours and it's the same employees, you're just using this money and saying, pull them off their normal job and we'll fund them during that period with this and not have to fund them our normal
Don't
route.
ask me, I don't know.
I mean, that's what I was gathering from it
But
was,
that's kind of what it.
And I don't know that our county employees, there's not a lot of overtime that people earn, like, there's a lot of people that do not work overtime. And so come in on their hours, what they deal with. I know that if they want us, if we want them to be in at 6 in the morning to be there, I think it will. I don't know if like an overtime budget would help with their overtime budget for making them a little bit more, bringing them up for.
so if it's not funded though, I'm just wondering if it's like, oh, sorry, we don't have anyone we can free up now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't.
It sounds like, and I'm kind of impartial on this, so maybe I can weigh in, but you know. Prior to us giving them that money, the sheriff's department had a hard time getting code enforcement people out there to actually enforce the codes with the landowner. They could arrest the culprits,
Yeah,
but there was nothing to enforce the landowner to clean it up and to be responsible for what they also profited out of because they leased the property at the very least. And then since then, from my observation, just as a resident, you know, I've seen on the news a couple times that you know, had them out there, they were there. It sounds like they are prioritizing those calls. So you're right, maybe they're just shuffling budget numbers, but now they're actually getting people out there, which I think is great. It seems like.
They're also now sending, I probably get 30 emails a week from them. Anytime that anybody upgrades the 400 amp service to 600 or whatever, just to be like, hey, they're putting in a ton of power here. I don't know what they're doing. So we're getting a loop now. I know that's created extra work for them because every single one, they're sending it to our team. And so now we're getting eyes on more. So they're doing quite a
if
bit.
code enforcement's following up, I'm wondering if they're going into civil penalties then. Like,
Yeah,
are they recouping money now that they're following
Unfortunately, I
up?
don't know that because it goes and then it.
Sounds like they are, because that was my question, you know.
Yeah.
Before, they were always like, oh, we can cite them, but they don't do anything. And for her to say she expects them all to come in compliance or pay the fine, to me, that was amazing to hear.
And a lot of it's
It
compliance
wasn't
too,
that
right?
way
It's
a year ago.
get your permits for your mechanical permits, come out, have us make sure that it's safe. So they're taking the safety factor out of a lot of it, is what we're saying, is when she says they're coming in within compliance, it's because they're getting everything inspected. Whether they gotta strip the sheetrock so you can see the electrical, which they do, they're coming into compliance so we have a safer community. I guess, is a lot more than fun.
It seems like pretty good bang for your buck. I mean, if you've got county employees on someone, that's pretty serious, you know, as opposed to a PSA or something. I mean, you're.
That is
For-
a stronger message, I think, to be right there looking at a person going, look, this is
And that,
unsafe.
yeah, and that goes through, ripples through the community too.
Yeah.
Joe got busted over there.
Yeah.
What happened? Oh, man, he's going under. They really hit him.
I mean, for the 20K we gave, they seem to have, paper stuff.
Well, and I'm glad it's no longer going to garbage cleanup, because I think the
Yeah,
first
right.
year, that's where it went for
Right.
CBD, you know, and I have no problem with that, right?
Why
Because that
why are
should
we
be,
paying for their
Yeah.
money they made?
yeah,
And then we switched it to enforcement. It
Right.
sounds like they really
They stepped up their game.
stepped up the game and worked well with it.
I don't necessarily think that 20,000 made that a huge leap. Because
It didn't pay for the budget to his point, but it got their attention.
they had to restructure anyway because of such a gap in income anyway. For funding wise, with reserves and a lot of that is permit based and building was down and, you know, just a trickle. But I've noticed reduced staff time, reduced office hours as a whole in that department, just for personal experience, and then also through code enforcement. For the personal matter, we did go to court. And there were no penalties or fee cost savings for the county in that manner. So what was it?
You said like to recoup.
To recoup, yeah. I think that they've done a really good job of cleaning everything up and making everything more efficient, and I think the 20,000 may have been a tiny blip on that. It's kind of what I was trying to go from there. But if they gave you access to that tool with complaints, then you can kind of go off using that to start an investigation or look for ways to access a property. So I don't know that it's going to make a substantial impact as a whole when you're talking about a multi-thousand, $100,000 program anyway. I mean, the one nice thing about large sections of government like CDD is if they're hurting, there's money the county can make available to help supplement and in reserve overall. You know, it's not a make or break is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not following, are you in
I-
favor of their 20,000 or?
I'm just saying, I don't think it's gonna make a huge impact, so I am indifferent on that 20,000,
Okay,
but I don't think it's going to make as much of an impact as the 60,000 is, you know, for the next program
okay,
in the grand scheme of things,
okay,
with word vomit added, you know.
okay. All right. Any other comments or discussion on the CBD? Matt, do you have anything you'd like to offer?
No, I think everybody said everything that I was thinking.
Okay, okay. All right, so now we are in the prevention and health promotion program, well. The health services, that's what I should say, the health services department. It's $60,000 once again, sounds like it's almost end of life for the PSAs that they're currently running. You know, I wonder if part of our recommendation should be maybe reduce the number of eyeballs and start using some of that money to develop the next set. I don't know. But I do think trying to avoid getting adults into trouble and using the Measure 110 funds to try and get them out of trouble, it's better to start at the youth age, you know.
Those numbers were pretty high. Exposure to that was the same, right slide. When she was talking about that, yeah, it was pretty high for the exposure to marijuana. Specifically, is what I thought was pretty high.
Well, and I mean, I agree that, I mean, that's probably our money. That is that youth education and parents learning how to speak to their children. I mean, that's, your most valuable tool in this whole process.
Right. And that's gonna carry on into other topics, you know, once the parent opens up the conversation about drugs and alcohol, well, you know, let's do talk about safe driving and safe sex and.
Well, and that's something that they're also doing, I don't know if you guys, the one, because they did partner with ODOT, so that it brought up the kid in the go-kart with his father, that was part of the funding came from ODOT in regards to impaired driving.
Right.
And so I think health services is also looking at
Other channels.
other channels and funding and expanding, kind of like, what are all the issues we have at hand here?
Out
Yeah.
of all the asks, is this the only one that provides PSA?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the big budget, if we're only putting this much towards PSA, that doesn't seem excessive to me.
Right.
And like I said before, my social media is flooded with it. I don't know if they're listening on my phone, but that I see that ad every day. So exposure's out there.
And do you have kids,
I do.
school age?
No, they're grown up. They're out, long out. So.
Well, are you using the opportunity to talk with them about some of this?
That train.
You wanna go So, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and, you know, I think that's money well spent because it was one of our best tools. But also marketing variable, right? I mean, whether it's 40 grand or 60 grand, you know, that's a couple less paid ads, that's one less TV that, you know, or to your point, very often, you know, this year it might be spent on production, next year it might be spent on placement. So I find with marketing, you do what you can with what you have. And, you know, that makes you actually more effective with your marketing, because if you're not getting a return on that channel, then you pivot.
Right.
But yeah, I still think it's money well spent. I know they could probably be a little more.
Her presentation was really good too.
Yeah.
Every time somebody, well, she knew, we've been doing this, here's the returns we're getting on it. I mean, she knew what was working, what wasn't, so it
Yeah.
sounds like she's more kind of read and run with what's working.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I like that it's going, not throwing the money away.
Right.
They had some really specific goals for the money, and one of them was redoing the Spanish PSAs, and that's been a market that they haven't been able to tap or failed to tap. So I think like yes, this will be money well spent. I agree with you guys on that.
Creation.
I just had a neighbor, my neighbor, who his youngest child is like a little hellion right now. And he knows my job working with juveniles, and I said, hey, you need to get on board with this.
Good.
And so you can have those conversations with your daughter, she skipped school and doing all kinds of stuff. But I knew she was gonna be a hellion when she was like this.
Yeah.
high.
Any other discussion on health services?
I think that was.
Okay. And our final budget request is the sheriff's department, $100,000 to continue the status quo level of support, which is an 8.69% increase over last year. What was last year?
Last year they got 94,000.
Which they said that they could do that, and I was doing like.
Oh, wait. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
usually
He had
96,
several
94.
numbers.
Yeah, you guys said 100, but you could do it for 96, which I actually liked it.
Because the year before, I think it was 60 and you guys chose to. I see
Yeah,
you
but
guys
at
did that
94, then
myself.
we're at 184, so they could do 95.
So they last year they requested 75 and you guys granted them 92.
More, yeah.
And now they're requesting 100. So they're like, they saw the writing on the wall.
Maybe that's what Joe's not-
I just think that's-
I don't want to answer any questions.
Maybe that's the answer.
But if we gave them 95, we would be right at that
It would all
185.
came out, yeah. I mean, and one thing, and I don't know, it's just me, that, you know, like. Community justice came in, we gave them X last year, now they're asking for X, and X. And community development came in, we only gave them 20, and they showed, you know. Told us what they did with it, it was fairly effective, and they asked for the same. I can't remember what we gave health services last year.
I think it was 60.
They requested 20 and they got 20.
Health
Okay.
services.
No, I'm sorry. Health services last year requested 60, they got 60.
Yeah,
CDD requested 20, they got 10. Community Justice requested 25, they got 10. Sheriff's Office requested 75, they got 92.
Oh, so we.
So that's, I guess if CDD got 10, because they asked for 20, but last time our relationship wasn't great, not that we had a bad relationship. Our involvement, we just didn't have as much involvement, like I said, this year.
Symbiotic now.
And sorry, I read that wrong.
Okay,
Community Justice requested 25, they got 10. CDD requested 20, they got 20. Health Services requested 60, they got 60. Sheriff's requested 75, they got 92. Okay, there was 4, you guys proposed 4 different ones and I
okay,
read the wrong one.
okay.
there's just something about coming back in and saying, hey, that we're not asking for more, we're asking for the same versus one that came in and, well, we've got priority 1, 2, and 3.
And we haven't spent,
And we haven't spent.
even though they're still within the
Yeah.
budget year, but nonetheless, they haven't spent. Well, based on what I have heard, I think we are narrowing it down to 10,000 for community justice priority 2. 20,000 for community development. 60,000 for health services and 95 for the sheriff's department.
And remember, it's only a recommendation. to the
Right.
County
It's only a
commissioners, and they can still do how they want, and normally do.
They normally accept your
follow our
request.
Rule, yeah, or recommendation.
Does anyone have a different proposal than those numbers?
Did somebody do the math? I'm not typing.
That is 185.
185.
I personally think 0 for community justice,
Okay,
as we are nearing July and have not spent $1. And that 6 to 9 month turnaround time could very well turn into an 18-month turnaround time, and we would still not spend the $10,000. And like I said before, I'm indifferent to community CDD. Because I mean, they can't statistically show marijuana cases being reduced. I mean, a lot of what I think I'm hearing is a lot of these are moving into legal apartments or homes. And the only way to narrow that down is gonna be like infrared in the sky or increased power bills.
So a lot of, not necessarily houses or apartments, but they're moving to shops. Large properties, shops,
People still have code violations.
which have the most of the code violations.
Yeah, maybe more than.
So for instance, the one we did last week had 5 air conditioners on it, not a single permit for any of it, or the electrical.
Or 1 breaker.
Actually, his electrical wasn't horrible, but yes. So they have been great, they're a great resource for me, so I'm a proponent of CDD just because. I've been there where they don't answer the phone or the email in the past, and just to see the turnaround, and they are there, and they are a great resource for us. And then again, the databases that they've given us access to, and they help us with, they've been a great asset. But that's just my one opinion, so.
okay, so we have an alternate recommendation from Andrew, which is 0 community justice. 20 to.
Yeah, I'm
we're-
good with 20 still.
Okay.
I'm just trying to
CDD.
mentally.
And where would you put the 10 that,
I would either do the sheriff's full amount or have a potential reserve for backup.
use it or lose it, I think, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah, the money needs to be, it needs, the departments need to account for it in their budget requests. Budgets have been, it's stressful for all the departments.
right, I
We
mean,
don't really have a resource to just
Sit on the.
sit on money.
So we can
I'm not
carry
sure,
it.
I'm not sure, I don't want to speak for the board, but money is very tight this year, and I'm not sure. The board is looking to not spend money that is available and is designated to be spent for purposes.
right, okay,
But I can take that recommendation, I'm not speaking before the board, I'm just, in discussions I've heard.
So I think what she's saying is that if we gave the sheriff the full $100, we'd have $5,000. But probably a loss somewhere.
maybe we give them 5.
Good.
Well, recommend that they be given 5 for their medical person. Okay, let's take a vote. Option 1. Community justice 10,000, CDD 20, health services 60, sheriff's department 95. That's option 1. Option 2 is something less for community justice with that 10,000 allocated somewhere else. And if we like that one, then we can figure out where that 10,000 or something less is allocated.
I think option, that would be like my segue to 5, 20, 60, 100.
5, 20, 60, 100.
Can you spell that out a little bit more, please? Sorry.
5 for justice, 20 for CDD, 60 for health, and 100 for police.
So option number 2 is 5K for community justice,
20,
20 for CDD.
60, health services,
services.
and 100 for sheriff. That's option 2. All in favor of option 1? 1, 2, 3. All in 4? Were you?
I'm in favor of both, so yes. So I really, I know I can't. I love that for one, I have a hard time voting for more money for us, so, but because it's like trying to say that, but we could use it, that would be nice, but.
Okay.
Option 1 was what? Which one was the 100,000 for sheriff?
Option
Option
1, you get
two.
95, option 2, you get
100.
for sheriff's.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, so option 1.
So option 1 I have, sorry, okay.
Matt,
So
Jeremy, Liz, and Mary, come on, you gotta commit. Okay.
4.
And
I know I'm
option-
poor too.
I
and
mean, it's
option-
$5,000 one way or the other.
Right.
Okay, well, let's look at priority 2 on, let's just
That's what I'm saying,
read
doesn't make
that
that
over
big a
again.
difference.
did we do an official vote on option 2 yet or
No,
not?
we haven't. Option 2.
I would.
Oh, you don't have to, I just, I'm not saying you have
1,
to.
2, 3, okay.
Did we even ask for?
Oh, yeah.
He voted for option 1.
Oh,
I
Right.
did option 1, yes.
thank you.
And there's still technically not to put a kink in this, but an extra $211. It's 185 to less.
Okay, that's a rounding error, Jen, but.
Oh, sorry, 811 actually.
That'll buy,
811?
will that,
185, 811.
will that buy us lunch or like?
811 was fine. I'm gonna stop bringing dinner, I guess.
Getting me a charcuterie.
So
That's
it's 4
beyond my culinary skill level.
it was 4 to 3, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay, is that it? I mean,
You can continue discussing or you can take that as a majority vote.
Which one was 4?
4 was option 1. But
I'm not that hard. Either way, I think it's.
neither am I. You said you can use the 5,000. I think this contracted medical director could probably do something for $5,000. They could contract with an individual to get it started. And maybe they can find the rest of the money that they needed until they start doing it. So I am now option 2.
I
Wow.
agree with that, just because if you're actually gonna make this program work, regardless of if we give them 10 or 5, they are gonna have to come up with that money or have to have it in a budget in order to have the, it come to life.
So are you changing to option 1 now?
No. I'm just saying, if they're gonna go for it, regardless of how much money they get, it should have been included in the realistic budget to make it work, you know what I'm saying?
In their own budget.
Correct. I mean, obviously, if they haven't spent what we gave them this fiscal year, then that program never actually happened.
Well, I'll also say they asked me if they had to spend it this fiscal year. They do not. No department has to spend it. And there's not a
So it rolls
requirement.
over.
Hmm?
So it rolls
So they
over.
don't use it or lose it.
Wait, if they don't use it, they lose it?
They do not.
They don't.
It rolls
Okay.
They indicated that they were going to, but they asked that point of clarification, I think, back in January, actually.
Okay,
I'm not sure if that adds anything to your discussion, but.
okay, well, so they can still make the 20,000 that we offered, okay. All right, so let's do it again. Okay, option one, which is 10 for community justice, 20 for CBD, 60 health services, 95 for sheriff. Option one,
100 share.
no, option
That's
one.
Oh, option one. Oh,
And Matt, that was two,
So Matt,
Matt,
hear me?
okay, Matt.
No problem with option two either.
That's what we're
Just for the
saying.
record,
difference
just
here.
for the record.
Okay, so option two is 5 for community justice, 20 CBD, 60 health services, 100 sheriff's department. All in favor of that one? Okay, there you go.
Do you want to allocate the 811? You don't have to. It's a
811,
forecasted amount, so.
where do you want to put 811?
Oh,
Health?
I'm just throwing something out there.
What would 811 do in the sheriff's department?
My lunch.
But would it buy a piece of equipment that you need?
that's what I'm wondering.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but like I said, we're getting the most out of this budget, so it's like, we're everybody, yeah.
So $8.11.
811.
Oh, 800.
Let's, I mean,
Whoa.
let's give it to community justice.
That's good.
It's
Okay,
almost
all right,
6.
I agree. Anyone dissent with that idea? 5811,
Cause now they only.
Which is option two. I'm
42.
putting it as option two and not another revote.
which is option two.
Maybe $4,200.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it.
All right. Woo!
Good job.
Yeah, I
And 10 minutes, with 10 minutes to spare.
We do need a round of applause. We got it done again.
No, that was good.
And you got all that, huh, Jen?
Yep, do you want to call for public comment?
Oh, yeah, oh, yes. Is there anybody here that would like to publicly comment in our CAP meeting on April 22nd?
There's a ton of them out there.
Silence. All right. With that,
What before?
oh,
So
next meeting.
next meeting, so I realized I left this off of, I didn't actually put topics. But I went and looked to see what you guys did in July of last year, and that's what I was talking to Angie about. That was when you had CDD come and talk about presentation on code compliance summary of so it'd be the 2024 annual reporting season. You want to have, Angie's good coming back and doing that on July 15th. Is that good for everyone?
I like that idea.
Okay.
What's that
And-
date, July 15th?
Yeah, don't we do the third Monday?
That's July is 15th, I thought was Wednesday. Oh, no, it is the 15th, did I?
Monday.
Because the Monday is the first,
yeah.
July 1st is the Monday, so that's
Yeah.
why it's July
Yes.
15th.
Yes.
Okay, so do you have any other topics?
I'm out of town July 15th. But someone else can be acting chair.
Have another acting chair, we can do it July 8th, we can do it July 22nd.
Either one works for me.
July 8th, I'm gonna be leaving for training.
Let's do the 22nd.
22nd. Matt, are you good for 22nd of July?
Good. Yep.
Okay.
Do you want to just have a short meeting since the middle of summer, or do you want to come up with another topic for that meeting as well?
Does it make sense, for it to be a joint presentation between you and code?
Yeah, I just did a presentation last week, or
I know.
last meeting though, I mean, I can, I mean, it just. A lot of the same stuff.
Okay.
It just keeps kind of.
Well, you can contribute, you don't necessarily have
We
to
end
do
up deciding on the 22nd, 7th.
Second,
22nd.
22, same date as today.
Got you.
I really wish that more people would try to put their name in the pool.
Pool for,
what we
Asking for
voted on.
funds.
Yeah, cause I'm thinking like education could use it and make a big impact, like yeah,
but Jen sends it out to all the departments.
We don't have an education department. And it goes out to all of our department heads. So, and I sent out 3 reminders this time. To every department head.
Yeah,
So-
so if they're not asking for the funds,
is that because they're their own entity essentially? Like Ben Lapine School?
Yeah, that's not a county run.
And we're not allowed to give other, it has to be county run, yeah?
I would have to go back and check with legal on that, but the money is spent is specifically for county to use.
Did you have clear lines?
Cities
spread
get their
through
own
that?
money,
We had clear
and
lines.
the counties and the cities divided.
We did, but they weren't asking
So,
for
yeah,
money.
we're just
That was
really
more than it
determining how the county spends their portion of it.
Yeah, and it's small because the county stopped opted out, but they have
Fathered in and,
these few grandfathered in ones, which is why, so it's a very small pool of funds
yeah,
compared to what most are working with.
compared to with the city and.
Agenda wise, I'm thinking trends, whether you guys are seeing some different trends between now and the summer and maybe even behavioral health. What kinds of trends are we seeing as far as substance abuse besides, yeah, just what trends are out there? It's constantly changing.
Well, and I'd also like to suggest that is this I know this is a legal requirement based on whatever the statute was that was passed, but is the cap required to go on in perpetuity? Because if we're only getting 4 or 5 requests for funding, and if we're essentially approving those, at some point, can we go back to our legislature?
I think it's been proposed, and I wouldn't be surprised if it comes up specifically for counties who have opted out.
Okay,
It definitely was not a priority of last session. I have heard talks. I don't know if it's a priority for the next session. You can certainly hit your legislatures up for it. But there is certainly an argument to be made for the counties who have opted out and who receive a small pool of funds like Deschutes County. Is it worth the staff time and the committee's
Right.
time at this juncture?
and
The
are
other thing we
the
can look at
only-
too is seeing if we can reduce the amount of meetings, if we just meet once or twice a year.
But there's gonna be certain rules so for meeting,
I have to go look, again, these are things I could look at, I could talk with legal counsel on, I know we develop our own charter. I don't know what Oregon state statute says on those committees, so,
Robert's rules, is that right?
sorry,
Robert's rules, is that what we're functioning under? Because I believe Robert's rule is quarterly meetings.
I came in at the, let me just pull up the charter real quick.
And we can't use any of these funds to pay for your time.
I mean, they could probably, but it takes up like half a percentage of my time. You guys are very self-sufficient, which I love.
They do a lot of behind the scenes work. She always sends me a draft of the minutes and, there's all that back and forth and you're sending emails out to.
I think it should go to our sandwich.
Definitely you guys should eat, for sure.
Maybe
I'll take a poll to see if I should even bring food next time. We're trying to give you a thank you for showing up on your volunteer time, but,
But I think part of the legislation in getting grandfathered back in to get that money was that they run it through this, so you would have to probably submit a bill to get it changed.
Right.
Which is a lot of, I don't know which is more headache.
Well, yeah,
Us showing up or.
I mean, I don't mind
Drafted by
coming.
legislation.
Coming to
Or right,
these
yeah, going through
meetings.
legislation again, I think that's a crapshoot, right?
Right,
I can, what I'll prep for the next meeting is looking to see if there is an Oregon statute requirement on the charter. I just looked at the charter, it just said quarterly, but charters can always be amended. I don't know, originally this meeting landed, or this committee started with CDD, and then it got brought over to the board.
Right.
And then Eric did it, and then I came on board and took it over, so there's been a few people do the process, so for sure charters can be amended. I don't know if the charter is written because of Oregon statute, or if it was written just because standardly we do committee meetings on a quarterly basis. So if we can, I'll look into seeing if we need quarterly meetings, or if we can do 2 a year.
right.
And then I can also contact our lobbyist and see if he hears any movement on the update. I'm not sure that will impact anything, just what they may talk about doing in July. We don't know what they're gonna do in March of next year for the
Right.
legislature, and that can all go askew, but
Right.
I'm not sure it's anything. As far as I know that any individual commissioner is interested in, but I could ask around too.
One thing I wanted to bring up, and we spend 4 meetings a year just deciding how this money gets spent, hearing other people. You know, I find it highly ironic that I sit on the economic development seat, when there is no conversation about economic development. You know, we just sit here and listen to them and decide how to spend money, and I don't know what our.
Sounds like Gary's presenting next time.
But I mean, you know, like Redmond, you know, they're going back and forth whether they're going to allow it or not. And I think truly, eventually, they're going to, it's just a matter of time. And maybe we should be bringing the Redmond Council in here and talking to them that, you know, when I went to their city council meeting, it was the chief of police of Bend, the attorney of Bend, all of these different county and city officials that were basically telling them, hey, we legalized it. And, you know, the world didn't come to
The sky didn't fall.
the sky didn't fall. It actually, you know, I mean, do you really think, and I brought this up at the meeting, do you really think that that Redmond opting out is reducing the cannabis consumption of the people in Redmond? Or do you just think they're coming to Bend buying it and Redmond just isn't getting any money? I don't know. It seems logical to me. But
Nobody in Redmond uses cannabis.
no, and them having to drive to Bend, I'm sure just, you know, cuts it the use in half.
And they don't use
Because they
it
don't
on
come
their
here-
drive back.
Yeah, they don't come here to camp, you know, they don't come here to shop and all that anyhow. And, you know, the ones on the north and south end of town are some of the busiest ones because people are coming from Redmond, people are coming from out of town. So, I mean, it just seems totally hypocritical to me that,
So I think
we're
that,
not having some conversations bigger than just how to spend this money.
so I think that raises like an invitation to those whoever in Redmond come to one of these meetings to see how we function and what we're doing with those dollars, so
We've
they,
all come together, right? I mean, we all understand each other better now and
right,
where those dollars are going and feel we're doing a good thing.
right. No, I think.
But that's not part of our charter.
Well, that's what I'm asking. And which, again, I find it highly ironic that in that charter, you're required to have an economic development seat nominated by the Economic Development Councils in town, but yet we don't have any conversation.
To refresh the charter, the purpose of the charter is very small. The board appointed the CAP, blah, 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 to meet quarterly and provide at least 3 recommendations. 1, the use of money is transferred to the county under ORS, blah, blah, blah. Increase in public safety measures related to marijuana use and marijuana entitles in the county. And issues presented by the production, processing, wholesaling, and distribution of marijuana in the unincorporated area subject to the jurisdiction of the county.
So we don't really do the other two things very much.
Doesn't necessarily say you can't.
And it also said unincorporated, so that would leave out Redmond.
So county business is the unincorporated of the
Right.
4 cities,
Right.
basically. And
It also doesn't necessarily say.
I don't know why we couldn't just invite them to see how this functions.
Well, they could join us on Zoom,
Yeah, they can join us and just see how it functions, how we function.
and then we might have public comment.
I also kind of think that 3 instead of just 2, and we try to go toward the other 2 purposes a little bit more.
Okay, so can I do this for the next meeting? We'll have CDD come talk about their code compliance. I wanna touch base with legal and admin about potentially inviting other public officials to this meeting and seeing where, I don't wanna make that determination today. So I'll bring back the information I find out about inviting other cities to engage in this conversation in this committee. And then whether or not it's a requirement to have quarterly meetings. Then at that point, once we know what is within the parameters and what can and can't be done, then you can have that broader discussion. Is if you are required to meet quarterly, I mean, that's pretty much the end of that discussion, but then like then the discussion would be, what do you want to use apart from the budget discussions? What do you want to use the other meetings for? And then if it's a possibility, then we could set up to, ask Redmond in the fall. But I think if we can, if that does seem the appropriate line to go down, I think we'd wanna be specific about what we're asking of them or what we'd like to present on them, so that we can have that be part of that discussion in July and then queue up for the October meeting. Does that sound like the right kind of?
Yeah.
One of the things I heard out of that meeting from the chief of police of Bend is the 4 liquor stores in Bend represent 4 times as many police calls as the 28 dispensaries.
Calls to the liquor stores?
Calls from the liquor store for help, that somebody stole something, somebody's acting out, somebody's. They had to send, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but
Calls for service.
yeah, they had 4 times as many calls for service at the 4 liquor stores than the 28 dispensaries. So that really stood out to me.
The industry's doing a good job.
Try.
Yeah, no, you are. You are. Okay,
They will be treated.
Trying to think of,
I,
I think call the provider.
okay, the meeting is now adjourned to 8:05.
But
Bye, Matt.
uh,
Bye,
See
Matt.
everybody.
our money was